Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the show that celebrates the fact that there are Celtic fans all over the planet. And there's four of us joining you from various corners. Let me just first deal with the times before we say hello to the guys, because there's been some changes. This is the current situation. It's still 9:30 in Sydney, and many of those, however, Rome, Parkhead, and Pittsburgh. Well, Rome and Parkhead have changed. Pittsburgh's changing next week. So it's an ever-changing picture. That's why we're on, if you're in the UK, at 10:30 rather than 11:30. And will be for the foreseeable future. Stephen, it's still 9:30 in Australia where you are?
It surely is, yep. So, well, no change for me, which is good. I couldn't do it with being any later. I think that would push me just about over the edge.
And no change in Singapore, Jerry, where you and I are in the same time zone?
No change in Singapore, although I'm not quite sure what time zone I'm in right now, Gav, but it is 6:30 p.m. here.
And welcome Iain in Wales, where it's now 10:30. So you've just got out of bed extra early just to be with us. Is that right, Iain?
Oh, yeah, just rolled out, just rolled out the bed. I keep it. My wife's already annoyed at me saying, yeah, but it's 11:30 in my head, though. She hates it because I think the week after you kind of say, it's like 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, but it's 10 o'clock in our heads. And she's like, please stop saying this. So doing my best.
It's pretty confusing, but like most of us are in places where there isn't daylight saving, particularly. So, we're going to stick to doing what we've always done, and whatever changes happen. That can't be helped. Such is the nature of being, a worldwide show. Hey, Jerry, think about that.
Absolutely. Although you said most of us, and there's four of us on here, so it's 50% of us. The clocks don't change, Gav. To be pedantic.
Okay. Be pedantic. Let me see now. Well, let's see what we're talking about today. Let me give you the contents of the show. First of all, we're going to talk about Hibernian discontent. Little oblique Shakespeare reference there for the literary types among us. Second, we're going to talk about Jerry meandering. Third, we're going to talk about shape shifting, which is not the conspiracy theory. It's about the change of shape that Brendan brought about in the Atletico match. And what do we make of that? Then number 4, Buddies coming in. That's the visit of St Mirren to Celtic Park, which is the next game. And as always, a quick glance at the world of Celtic social media. All right, so that's the plan. We have some comments coming in here. And just before we do any of those things, we're going to have to deal with. Paddy Lavery says, good morning, guys. Has Gav gotten over his totally innocent comment being taken out of context the other day? Series of smiley faces. Okay, so just quickly, let's talk about that. Now, I was on Axom the other day. No, I wasn't on Axom. I was watching Axom the other day, as I often do, and have done for years. And a lot of the viewers were commenting on how they couldn't see the guest because there was a bright light behind his head coming through the window. And for a time, it seemed like that was dominating the live chat among the viewers. And I'd been sending a few comments to some of them, names I recognize. And then I made a comment about how they weren't paying attention to the conversation because of this issue. And Paul John Dykes pulled up the comment and wasn't happy about it. Now, that was not meant as an attack by a Celtic World on Axon. Of course not. But I can understand why in the moment, during the live stream, it might have looked like that to Paul John. And I don't blame him, really. I might be tempted to do the same myself. But it was a pretty uncomfortable scenario, let's just say. Anyway, we've been chatting over the weekend, Paul John and I, and it's all cool. He was very decent about it. We're both grown-ass men. Pretty sure my ass has grown significantly more than his. But, I think both parties, accept that what they did maybe here and there was a little bit regrettable, certain parts of it. Admittedly, I do squirm a bit at some of the words that I used, like lack of lighting quality control. That's not a good look. Saying that, I could have used better words there. But I certainly wasn't saying no one's listening to Axon, which at the time he seemed to take it as. So anyway, my key takeaway for the future is not to comment on any other Celtic YouTube channels when logged in as a Celtic World. And I'm always logged in as a Celtic World on YouTube, so that's going to have to change. Comments you make can be viewed with suspicion, and even your mere presence, if you say nothing, can look like a marketing exercise. So in my mind, I was just being a punter, chatting to other punters. But from the outside, it doesn't look like that. I can appreciate that. Anyway, it put some of our viewers in an awkward position. You know who you are. A number of them were telling Paul John that it was a misunderstanding and defending me and all, which I appreciate, but I regret putting you in that position. And that also applies to other Celtic World contributors. Because, if I'm commenting as a Celtic World, it's kind of like an official communique, you could imagine. So that's what I've got to say about that. Shall I put any of the... well, maybe some of those comments might not go up. I'll put up Paddy's saying, "Admit it, Gav, your balls fell off." And made a very small tinny noise as they hit the floor. All right, so I think it's best we move on from the complex minefield of online intercourse, not that type, and do what we're here for, the much simpler task of talking about football. So, Hibernian 0, Celtic 0. Stephen in Sydney, how many times did you nod off during that game?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch it live. I watched it on repeat. It was a 1 o'clock in the morning kickoff, so it was too late for me with an early rise the following day. So I watched it on repeat already, having known the score, and I can't think of a more hideous experience recently than having to sit and watch that 90 minutes already, knowing how it finishes up. So it was a pretty dull experience and not great at all.
I don't know how we're going to fill too much time talking about the Hibs game, because my notes that I write in advance are like overall game response, first half goals, incidents, second half goals, incidents. It's basically NA across the board, Jerry, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And as I said, I watched the first half walking between terminals in Heathrow, and maybe it was because I was walking between terminals in Heathrow. I didn't think we were as bad or as lackluster in the first half as we were in the second. But yeah, I tried. I rewatched again earlier today and was trying to pull out incidents where we had a glimpse of goal. But I mean, 21 shots in the game, 6 on target or something. And Hibs, I think, had 1 shot on target the whole game. It was pretty woeful stuff.
It's hard to even remember any of those. We communicated on the group chat at halftime, and I said, "Are we getting 3 points here?" And you said, "It looks like 1."
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's probably important to put to add a bit of context, because I think there's no getting away. It was terrible. It was a really awful 90 minutes. But I think, we've played Aberdeen, Hearts, Livy, Motherwell, Hibs and Rangers all the way from home, only dropped 2 points. So I think most people would have taken that, in addition to having like a 5-point gap at the top. And also, I can't remember if someone had said it, but when we played Bodo under Ange, we drew at Hibs 3 days later. So I think some of the reactions, it's classic, isn't it? Like, some of the reactions is a bit over the top. I think we're always going to have those games, but it really did feel, I mean, like at halftime, it was like this feels like a European hangover performance. It was just slow football, slow decision making, people looking a yard off the pace. And I do think it's probably important to give credit to Hibs, who are obviously trying to carve out a pretty distinct style, especially when we look at some of the dross that's kind of served up across the place. Hibs are trying to do something different. I still think we should have had more than enough to beat them, but we'll probably come on to it. But things like the players that Rodgers has at his disposal and 1 or 2 other bits is probably the limiting factor why it was like so drab.
Yeah, no, this show is called Capital Management, and we're going to return to that theme over and over again. But first of all, at this stage of the show, it's about how Brendan managed this game in the capital. So, Stephen, were you happy with the team he put out? Were you happy with the changes he made?
Well, I kind of predicted that there wouldn't really be many changes from the game on Wednesday night. I did think maybe you would see Nawrocki coming back into the team and possibly Scales moving out to left back, given that Taylor had such a poor game against Atletico Madrid. But that was the only change I really saw happening. With Atati being injured, I felt as if Bernardo would be given an opportunity again, and he was. And so just to answer your question, I was pretty pleased. I didn't really see any alternatives, and I don't think there's an argument there for playing O up front. There's maybe an argument there for starting James Forrest, but apart from that, I don't think there was too many decisions to be made, and leaving O on the bench and leaving Forrest on the bench, I agreed with both those decisions. So it's all right being wise after the fact and saying, we should have made changes. But I think Rodgers was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. If you think back, talking about Ange last year, drawing at Hibs, he also went to Paisley and got beat. And he made far too many changes and got really panned for that, for just making too many changes at one time. And if we were sitting here tonight, having drawn or lost to Hibs, having started with O and James Forrest, the manager would be right in the crosshairs. So I think he's doing the best with what he has, and I really couldn't, with any great passion, argue against the starting lineup.
Yeah, and look, can I just on that? This I think, because I've seen a couple of people say like O could have started, or like, we really need Giakoumakis, like that sort of kind of thing getting wheeled out again. The fact is, I don't know if a couple of different players would have made a difference, especially someone like O. The best chance we had in the first half, there was a poor kick out from Marshall, and Palmer capitalised on it. He gave it to Cal McGregor. All Cal McGregor had to do was give it to Kyogo, and he basically had an open net, but instead he smashed it at the goal. Poor decision. So if O was there, he still wouldn't be getting the ball. So it wasn't. I agree with Stephen. I think it was. We all kind of said, yeah, that's the best team to put out. Our problem came later when the changes had to be made.
Okay. Jerry, you want to jump in there as well?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, certainly when I read the team sheet, I wasn't surprised. I thought he might have tried to rest a couple of players, but wasn't surprised that he didn't. And as a result, I think we definitely looked tired. We definitely looked off it. And again, mentally, I think more than physically, I think it was that decision making. It was, a quick pass, picking out a pass. We just weren't at it at all. And then I think for me in that first half, when Ali got the scalp in the gub with the ball and get taken off, that and bringing again. Big fan of Tony Ralston and everything that he's done over the last couple of seasons, but I think that started the decline, in my opinion. I mean, it's just doesn't have the capability that AJ has. So, but wasn't disappointed with the team. Getting into the second half and the changes. I mean, I certainly it depresses me when we bring James Forrest on, and when we bring James Forrest and Mikey Johnson on. Then again, we'll probably talk about that later on. But it does show.
Let's talk about it now.
Well, I think a couple of things. It shows the lack of trust in the players that he's got. I mean, he's seen these players week in, week out training, and Brendan's obviously a big fan of James Forrest. One of our club members, old man, if he's watching it on the telly, he'll switch it off if James Forrest is brought in. He can't abide him. But in saying that, there's one of three people in the history of Celtic that have scored 100 goals and had 100 assists, right? So he's certainly played his part for the club. But I would certainly have much rather seen him give someone who wasn't James Forrest an opportunity. And that being said, I mean, he scalped the bar with however many minutes to go. So, I mean, he does get himself in a position to score goals. But, yeah, I mean, we clearly need to, in the January window, bring in some some players that Brendan believes will cut the mustard, because clearly there's a large proportion of players that we have and have bought over the last year or so that he doesn't trust.
I think Red Scotland is right there when he's saying that we're ending the game with players like Mikey Johnson, James Forrest. I'd add in David Turnbull to that as well.
Absolutely.
I don't really have a massive issue sometimes with Forrest starting. I think there's a role for him to play. I do think, even though I'm not his biggest fan, I think there's a role for David Turnbull to play. But when you're 0-0 and chasing the game, you don't want to be seeing Turnbull and Forrest coming on, both of them as slow as a week in the jail. And then Mikey Johnson, who's been out the picture. And the worrying thing about the Mikey Johnson one is that Iain hasn't been trusted. So I don't know what is going on there. But I would have expected Iain to come on before Mikey Johnson, and Mikey Johnson came on and kind of did what he did, which was, I think someone said, he showed plenty of drive and determination, which is great. If you chucked me on for the last 30 minutes, I'd like to think I'd have a bit of drive and determination, but the quality would be lacking.
Warmed the keeper's hands once and gave the ball away about a dozen times.
Yeah, there's a few other people here in the comments just saying hello. And Frank Brennan, any criticisms of the woeful entire performance are not over the top? Criticizing the performance, not over the top, but some of the criticism, it's fair to say, is over the top. It's like the end of the world. I think that's the point that you were making in. And just quickly, here's Patty, our quality controller. This is a point I've made to Stephen many times. Just can't get through to him. Don't know what to do.
Yeah, I've made the point back to you that I couldn't give a shite.
Dear, oh dear. Hey, don't you be insulting our commenters, I don't like to see that.
I wasn't insulting the commenters, I was insulting you, Gav.
Oh, well, that's okay. That's fine. That's par for the course. All right, good. So, yeah, so do you think Brendan is sending a message to the board there? Is he saying, look, on the one hand, I, Brendan Rodgers, can get Celtic to compete with the best teams in Europe, but on the other hand, in the very next game, you have to give me the tools and loosen the purse strings in a way that you haven't recently. You need to factor some significant player acquisition cost into your capital management plans. Stephen.
No, I don't think he's deliberately sending a message. I think he's looking at these guys day in, day out in training. And he's obviously, he's been quite clear about the fact that these players have been signed by the club's recruitment team, headed up by Long Jr. And he's obviously having a look at them in training, and he just doesn't think they're up to the task. I found it very interesting during the week. He was talking about Marco Tellio, and he was saying that Marco Tellio was struggling to adjust to the intensity of the game, which was a very interesting comment, given that he's not played a single minute of football in Scotland. So that, to me, is Brendan speak for he's not of the required quality to play for Celtic, not at this point in time, in any case. And that's probably the same for the list of players who are not contributing at the moment, who were all signed in the summer. So I don't specifically think he's trying to make some surreptitious point to the board. I think he's just picking the players who he thinks are the best at his disposal. Now, at that point, that happens to be, James Forrest getting picked in front of Iain, because he obviously thinks James Forrest can make a better contribution than Iain. Now, that is a scary thing to say, given the fact that Iain's so much younger than Forrest and is supposed to be a player with potential. And Forrest, for me, the more minutes James Forrest gets for Celtic, I think it's going to be directly proportional to how badly our season's going. Because it shows you that we're not in a good place in the wide areas, and so much of our positive play comes from the wide positions, and I think that's really been the difference from this year to last, is that the productivity from wide areas just isn't there. So I think it's just a question of he's seen these guys in training and he doesn't think they're very good.
You're on mute, yeah.
Sorry, an ambulance went past. It's pretty sad that Jamesy Forrest has become the bellwether for our crapness or otherwise. We need to move on quite quickly. Has anyone got anything they really want to say about the Hibs game and this subject we're discussing?
I just got one thing. I mean, like, you know, the people have that cliche. I don't really want to talk about referees. Well, I do like to talk about referees because I think any chance we had yesterday, some of that breaking up by Alan Muir. I mean, it's getting ridiculous now. I mean, it could be argued that he was warming up for his VAR appearance at Ibrox, but I mean, we have a real problem with referees breaking up the play for us. So even when we were starting to get a bit, there was a couple of instances, especially one in the Hibs left back area, where the Hibs player clearly fouled one of ours, and it went to Hibs. And I think it's getting to that stage of the season now where some of these things, maybe Roger's already started a couple of murmurings. I think we probably need to dial up a bit now, because it is, without, you know, the tinfoil hat going on, some of this stuff is just a bit wild. It's getting wild now. Let's leave it at that. It's getting a bit wild now.
Okay, well, let's move away from the SPFL, shall we? And have a quick look back at the Atletico game. And now, Jerry, very kindly, on behalf of everyone in the Celtic world, spread out as we are all over the place, was at the game and has provided us with a few little videos and photos to enjoy. So maybe we'll just watch the video, come back quickly, and comment in between each video. So here we are, approaching paradise.
Celtic Park before the Atletico Madrid game. As you can probably guess, we were on the fucking cans. This is Bobby.
Hell.
Come all the way from fucking Raleigh,
North Carolina, baby. Come on.
To see the hoop. We're obviously here from Singapore, as you know. Looking forward to a fantastic night, as always, at Celtic Park. Let's see how we go.
Hell.
I'm confident, as always, this will be 7-zip. It does, so always 7-0. Always my prediction in any game. But anyway, take any kind of result, obviously. Just glad to be here. Blessed to be here.
Let's go.
So, Jerry, did you just meet that fella in the pub and stick your arm around him, or do you know him from before?
No, actually, the main reason I was there, this is a young fella who works in the same company as me, and we were at a sales kickoff in February of this year, and one of his bucket list things to do was to go to a Champions League game, and I said, I'll take you, no problem. Celtic under lights, Champions League, there is no better place to be in the world. So, and he's been a football fan all his life. He played college football, soccer, etc. So we decided that the pick of the bunch for us was going to be the Atletico Madrid game. So no, he flew in on the Tuesday. I flew in on the Monday morning. He flew in on the Tuesday morning, and even took the missus with me as well. So, but she'd only found out the Thursday before the game that she was going to Glasgow. So anyway, it was so a bit of a lifelong ambition for him. I was fulfilling, and gave me a great excuse to get back to Celtic Park and see a Champions League game. So,
has anyone been to Raleigh, North Carolina? No, I think the Carolinas look nice to me. Anyway, let's carry on with the next one. This is pretty exciting. The roar when the Champions League tune started there would send shivers down your spine, even just watching that. How good was that, Jerry?
I've got shivers going down my spine now. Every time you hear that music, and the young fella from Raleigh, North Carolina, when we started singing "Walk On," post that. My sister-in-law, who was with me as well, said he's greeting, and sure enough, he had tears rolling down his face. He's saying, "This is just unbelievable." He's seen this on the television so many times. He said, "But unless you're here, unless you feel the atmosphere, then there's nothing like it." And there's nothing like being at Celtic Park under lights and hearing that tune at the start of a game. It's wonderful.
Very good. Now, the next one I'm going to play, I better explain a bit. I don't know if you meant to send me this one, Jerry, but you were recording while in your pocket.
All right.
It sounds like a scene from Trainspotting coming up here. It's in the wrong video.
He's recording from his pocket, but the audio, one part of the audio was so good that I thought I had to play it. So you're not going to get much visuals from this. If flickering is a problem, you might want to close your eyes.
I've also realised I need to upgrade my phone. I need one with a better camera. That was pish, the quality there.
But yeah, this one's quite interesting. That was the sound of Kyogo's goal.
Yeah, that must have been about the 4th minute then. So I couldn't have, the clip I sent you couldn't have been too long then, Gav. But.
Well, it was a bit longer than that. I spared our viewers
the rest of the first half.
Yes, and there was a pretty shocking bit where there was a hole in your pocket, and we saw inside. No, there wasn't. All right, and something you mentioned a little bit earlier, which I'm going to play now. This will be the equivalent of our Celtic karaoke for this week, because I'm pretty sure it's your dulcet tones that can be heard ringing out, Jerry, on this next clip. Yes, round of applause there for Jerry's singing. That was wonderful.
You can actually, there was a 6-year-old kid right behind me.
Yeah,
and
you can hear the wee boys. Yeah,
he was hilarious. My missus is saying, you need to calm down and you need to stop swearing. And this wee guy behind me was much worse than me. You tell him to stop swearing.
But yeah, that's great. I mean, that makes you feel like you were there. Steve, Iain, quality, eh?
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, Iain, when you go.
No, I was just going to say, yes, there's nothing better than big games under the lights, and the atmosphere is, people mock the disco lights when they came in, but it is a bit different with those. It does bring an extra dimension, to be fair.
Yeah, it's certainly something you miss when you've not been home in a while, getting to those sort of games and seeing that atmosphere. It looked absolutely incredible, and the sort of unique circumstances of that game, shall we say, as you can see from the flags all around there, I think gave it just a little bit of an extra dimension. And the sort of "You'll Never Walk Alone" was sang with just a little bit more passion, and I think that particular video of that particular song was shared more widely than any other Celtic song I can remember in living memory. So it looked like a great night, and I'm pretty jealous I wasn't there.
Yeah.
We have the benefit in those seats. That's where my season tickets are. We've got the benefit where so the club Celtic seats, but they're right next to. There's basically as close as you can get to the last line of seats before the Green Brigade down there. So it's just and it's right in the 18-yard line. It's just a great place to watch a football game because you've got everything. You've got the atmosphere of the Green Brigade, which was sadly lacking. I noticed at the Hibs game at the weekend. So.
Okay, well, we've also got some stills, so let's go over to those. Should I put them up like that so we can see them? See our reactions. Now, does anyone know whose parents these are? Well, let's see if anyone in the comments can tell us whose parents these are.
Is it Matt O'Reilly's?
Ah, damn it! In the comments.
Yeah, it's Matt O'Reilly.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was just the guy looked Danish.
Well, he's English. His mum's Danish.
Is he?
Yeah, the mum's Danish.
Well, his name's O'Reilly, so that's after his.
I know. Isn't he Matthew Sean O'Reilly? How come he's not declaring for the Republic?
Yeah. He was showing me a picture of him when he was in his late teens or early 20s playing guitar, and he's his absolute double of Matt's his absolute double.
Mm-hmm.
That was so I was staying in the Radisson Red hotel, and they came in as guests of Chris Traynor, who I'm guessing you know Chris Traynor. Chris is one of them. I think the second largest individual investor in Celtic, and he owns the Radisson Red Hotel. And I was fortunate enough to meet him when he was in Australia in November on the Ange tour, and asked me where we stayed. And we normally stay in the Dakota, and he said, "I'll get you a decent rate at the hotel." So I'd gone up for a nightcap after the game just for one, and then next thing, Chris and his missus and their kids and these guys arrived in. So I finished at closer to 3 a.m. Then the place is meant to close at midnight. So yeah, I don't know how many drinks I had at that point.
Well, I have to say, it looks a little bit like Mr. O'Reilly's more comfortable with having your arm around him than Mrs. O'Reilly.
So I think she was. I think
she's pretty concerned.
She looks as though she's more scared by the person behind the camera, I would say, Gav, than me.
Don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Very
good. Next one. Here's a couple of people looking buoyed by success.
Yes. Yeah, that's a revamp of a photo we took. I got Tom. Actually, the treble we were in. We're in hospitality, and I met Tom, and we got a photograph of Tom Boyd with the Sing Tims flag then. And in fact, he was very generous, and he was going to commentate in the game and gave the Sing Tims a mention as well. But yeah, he was just walking through the lounge, and I shouted Tom, and he was rushing to get to whatever hospitality area he was getting to, and he was good enough to stop and at least get a couple of pics with us with the St Tim's flag again. He's a good guy, Tom.
He's a top quality bloke, isn't he, Tom Boyd?
He is.
Yeah, we could actually done with him on the commentary for the Hibs game. I actually quite miss him. He's I know some people take the rip a bit, but he's very enthusiastic, and I think he's a miss.
Well, when you're comparing it with Peter Grant, then absolutely, I would totally agree. And I totally agree. That's me and the missus either side of the Cunning men. So Gary used to be on the committee of the Sing Tims, and him and his youngest child, his boy Tom, and they get my away tickets. So they're travelling. For the last couple of seasons been travelling around the country watching Celtic everywhere, but. just good friends. And the people you just randomly bump into. We were in Connolly's before we went to the game, and I bumped into someone else that used to be in the Sing Tims as well. So I mean, you're always going to meet people that you know, and that's just me and my North Carolinian mate and Gracie's the day before. I took him out a welcome to Glasgow actually the day before this, and we went and did the stadium tour, and then we went to the toll booth for, I think we had 4 pints in the toll booth, and then we went to Gracie's and had a couple of pints in Gracie's. We went to Daba and had a couple of bottles of wine, and then we went back to Gracie's, had a couple more pints, and went back to the hotel and had a whiskey, and he was not feeling good the next day.
I'm impressed that you can still put them away at that rate. I'm not suggesting at your advanced years or anything, Jerry, but my drinking has kind of fallen off a cliff.
So's mine, Gav.
Oh dear. Okay, you mentioned the stadium tour. Let's have a look at some of those.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I'd never ever done a stadium tour before, and it was awesome. It was a real experience. It was great fun. Wasn't quite the experience people would normally get because UEFA were in putting up all their stuff, and there were areas we couldn't go to. But yeah, the history in that cabinet. There's 5 this past season. There's 5 trophies in that cabinet. There's the treble that we had. The men's team had. There's a youth cup trophy there. You just can't. I'm just blocking that out slightly, and that's the women's trophy where my right hand is. And then obviously all the history, in the Coronation Cup, the Glasgow Cup, an amazing trophy. To my left hand there's a Fabergé egg, which has Jimmy Johnson in the middle of it, and it's signed by your woman, whatever her name is, Jean Fabergé or whatever. But I think she got 15 of these done and gave half the money from the sale of them to the Motor Neuron charity, and half the money went to the Johnson's family. It's just an idea of the same thing. Again,
this is all part of the tour.
Yeah, this is my missus. She reckons that she rubbed Kyogo's top. That's why he scored the first goal.
Definitely meant to be.
And then that's Daba. That's the old manager in Daba. Went into Daba. I mean, I don't know if you boys have been to Daba down the Merchant City, but great feed, and they're all Celtic fans as well. So that's always a pit stop for me when I'm back.
God, the flag is getting around. That flag is working hard.
That's a travel flag. It's important to and it's a talking point for everyone as well. I mean, you're obviously when you're out and you're in pubs with other folk, and it's just a good talking point. And the amount of people that have been to Singapore and stopped through and down through the years, the club's been going for a couple of decades. So the amount of people that just stop and tell you stories about being in Singapore, and I guess pleasingly, being part of the club, just the overwhelming response was that they were just made to feel so welcome, had such a good time hanging about with the Sing Tims. So
brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for those pictures and videos. Makes us feel like we were there in some sort of way. We're living vicariously through you, Jerry. We're living our dreams through you.
Need to get a Celtic One World for the next trip. Yeah, the only other game I've been at Parkhead this season was the St Johnstone home game, so that wasn't quite as quite the same experience.
Okay, the next thing then we're going to talk about on the agenda is Brendan's substitutions in the Atletico game, the changing of shape, the shape shifting that was mentioned during the second half of that game. Differing views among fans, some saying it in a sort of Jeeves and Woostery way, that it was a triumph, capital management, another reference back to the name of the show. Was he sacrificing any chance of 3 points to preserve 1? That's one question to have in your mind. The other is, at the time, honestly, were you surprised when he made those changes? Let's start with Iain.
I remember speaking with in the CSC at halftime, and I did think that he was going to make a change, and I didn't know if it was going to be formation or personnel, but it kind of felt like we were saying under Ange we would have just played the same way for the whole 90 minutes and kept on going. But I think Rodgers has it in him to spot something and change something. So I expected it to change, but I expected it more to be a kind of positive change to secure the win. But I think the way that the first half started, especially Maedad there, left back binned, and then Simeone changed, as a good manager, he changed it. And then Rodgers was forced to make a different sort of change to combat that. I think this goes back to something that we're discussing with Hibs. I think if he had a bit better quality on the bench, he might have been able to change it in a different way. I do think the change in formation probably stopped us from losing that goal. But I think when they went down a man, we just didn't have that ability, that spark and that pitch to take it on. So I think, full credit to him for changing it and kind of securing the point, if we want to look at it like that. But I think he's limited in terms of what he has available to take it beyond that, to make a change that's going to secure the point, but also give us a little bit more to secure the 3.
Right. So it sounds like you're thinking that it was kind of a negative move. There's people that are arguing against that and saying it wasn't at all. Stephen,
I don't think it's negative. Sorry, I don't think it's.
Well,
negative.
You're saying it's securing the 1 point. It was more about protecting what you've got.
But then that's positive if it's no points, isn't it? Like, he's made the tactical change to compensate, and I think that's a positive thing. Potato.
Okay, it's a bit racist. Saying that to me, right? But Stephen, you understand what people like. There's all sorts of opinions on this. There's all sorts of opinions on this subject. Here's a post on Twitter from Daryl Boy. People moaning about Rodgers taking off Palma for Phillips have no clue about football. You hear that a lot. If you question that, you're a clown. You don't understand the game. It might not necessarily be true. The manager recognized we'd lost control of the game and made a tactical switch which provided more security. We were running on empty. He doesn't make the sub and we'd have lost a third goal. I think that's roughly what Iain was saying. But there's another point down here which says, I see it as an attacking move. See this, the hoops here. I see it as an attacking move. If anything, I thought it made us more open. He wanted the pace of our 2 up top against their 3. Weakened us out wide, though, as took away the overlap and left it to our fullbacks to create. I don't actually think the switch worked. What's your view on it, Stephen?
Well, I pretty much agree with Iain. I think at the point in time when he made the switch, the game was in danger of running away from us. Atletico had brought on Llorente, and he was running amok basically. And I think Greg Taylor was really struggling in defence, and they had just equalised. And I think the game was only heading in one direction at that point. And I think it was only going to be a matter of time before they scored again. But he made the changes, and it definitely solidified us. It took sort of Greg Taylor out the sort of defensive firing line a little bit as well, pushed him further up and wide. So that it was successful from that point of view, and sort of played more to his strengths, and it solidified us at the back. And I think from that point on, we were always heading for a positive result. Now, once you can never predict a team like Atletico Madrid are going to get a man sent off. You can't legislate for that. And when they did get sent off, unfortunately, we were just too gassed, I think, to put the foot on the accelerator again. I think, I don't think it was a question of personnel at that point. I think guys like Maeda were just run out. They just ran themselves dry. And Kyogo as well was very tired. Now, I've seen a few people mentioning that they should have gave the last 15 minutes, but I don't think I just don't think O's ready for that level of football. It's arguable whether he's ready for any level of football at the moment, but throwing him into a Champions League game with 15 minutes to go chasing a win, I don't think was the right thing to do. So Brendan had made comments after the Lazio game, about if you're not going to win the game, you make sure you don't lose it. And I think, when it got to maybe 10 minutes to go, that certainly was the driving force behind the way the team were playing, particularly since everybody was really tired. So I don't have a problem with it, and it just shows you that the different type of coach we have in the dugout now, a guy who can make changes in game, a guy who's quite happy to change not only personnel but formation. As a sort of complete opposite to Ange, who was very, very laser focused on one formation.
Yeah, a couple of points coming in along similar lines. Brendan's change, which took guts. I think that's an important point, because when it happened, to take Palma off and put Phillips on, the optics of that are so poor. Taking off one of your only creative players left. Atate's out for until New Year now, we saw. That's depressing. But taking the one of the possible game winners off and putting on Phillips, who looks pedestrian at best, was the optics of that weren't great. But everyone seems to be generally appreciative that it was good management. Are you going along with that, Jerry?
Yeah, I was for that second Madrid goal. We were right in line with that, and I haven't rewatched the game, but Greg Taylor has a choice there. He can either go to the ball or he can steps back, boom, cross, goal. And I think we were going to continue. We're going to continue having those problems down there. As soon as he brought Big Nat on, we just looked robust again at the back. I didn't think we looked as though we were liable to lose another goal. Now, the flip side of that is we didn't look liable to score another goal either. But again, you can't legislate for having a man sent off. But I thought it, again, I'm not sure I would have taken Palma off necessarily, but not sure who I would have taken off. Maybe Maeda instead of Palma. But I thought we had to, and interestingly, my American friends saying that left back's your biggest problem in this team right now, and I'm like, I totally agree, and I think we all agree that we all have a lot of time for Greg Taylor, but at that level he's just found wanting. But yeah, and I think also when we get back into the lounge afterwards, people were, obviously it was a great. No matter what, it was a great performance, but to get a result, and all the people I was talking to were at the Lazio game, and to lose a goal in the 95th minute when you thought you were getting at least 1 point and deserved at least 1 point in the game, and yeah, everyone to a man and a woman that I spoke to were very pleased with the way that he'd managed the game.
If that had happened again, we'd have been so sick to the stomach if we'd lost a goal in the last few minutes. It would have been incredibly depressing. But we didn't, so got a point on the board. Yay.
And that's a team that just gave Real a pumping, right? An absolute pumping. So
yeah, no, it was a great night. There's no doubt. And yeah, as somebody said earlier, you picked a good night to go there, Jerry. And you consider some of the other games you could have been at. Well,
I was at the Real Madrid game last season. We lost 3-0, and that was a great night as well. But when the last 30 minutes, we get trounced.
Well, let's spare a thought for all those hardy souls who are going to go and watch St Mirren when they come to play us. The Buddies, as they're known. Who can tell me why they're called the Buddies?
Actually, I'm just going to do one thing here for Frank.
I was going to play the sound of crickets there as we waited for the answer.
Frank, just for you.
Oh, he's changed his hat. He's changed this.
Something it's something to do with Paisley, the town. I think
it is something to do with Paisley.
Specifically related to St Mirren, but
it comes from the old Scottish custom of calling a person a body, pronounced bidi, as in nobody cares, mate. If you look at paisley.org.uk, it says old Scottish quote saying that people from the Highlands call themselves Highland gentlemen. And they also mentioned lowland farmers and Paisley buddies. It was just a way that describes someone from a town. It's got nothing to do with the American saying of buddy as in pal or friend. It's an old Scottish word simply meaning people or folk. So we've got some folk coming to visit. What about their league position? Let's have a look at that. They're sitting in third. 18 points after 9 games. They've had a good start to the season.
If it hadn't been for John Beaton, they might have been sitting joint second. But
that's another podcast.
They've played a game less as well there, so they're potentially on level on points with the bad guys. So
if they beat the good guys, Let's not
Yeah.
raise that spectre. But, let's be fair. No one caused Ange's Celtic more problems than wee Stephen Robinson. And this is a fixture out of this whole bunch of fixtures that I always thought was... I don't like facing St Mirren because of recent history, to be honest. I think at least this one's at home, so we should be okay. But St Mirren are no soft touch these days, are they, Jerry?
No soft touch when you consider they beat us 2-0 at home last season. But then, I mean, we gave them a couple of trouncings as well. So I don't, I think in the main, I mean, and outside of the St Johnstone game at home this season, I think teams are struggling again to come and get anything out of Celtic Park. So I think, 7-0, as I said, my usual prediction for a game.
Predictions.
I'll get it right sometime.
7-0 your usual prediction, and cap switching seems to be your signature move.
I'm confident. Well, I did that specifically for Frank. Frank was requesting that I hadn't done.
Mickey is from Paisley originally. There you go. Who knew? So do we want to go do some predictions now? We're at 51 minutes. Time is against us. We need to wrap up quickly. I know Iain has a hard stop at hour. So if he has to disappear, if the conversation meanders on. Stephen, are you predicting a home victory, bounce back from the little wobble, normal business is resumed?
Yeah, I think like any of these games, it all depends if you get an early goal. You get an early goal, the game opens up, and you can then go on and score 4 and 5 quite easily. But it just all comes down to the early goal. I think they'll get a reaction though after a poor result on the weekend. I think we'll win 4-0.
4-0, big shout. Iain, can higher.
No, I think I'll go for a 2-0. I think I'll go for a 2-0. I think, like you said, if we get that early goal, I think it could be more. But I think it depends on like a couple of factors. The players will be better rested. I think Hatate is going to be a miss to the team in terms of like the attacking intent. And again, know your team, but we'll see who the referee is as well, won't we? Because I think there's some levelling up going on at the moment. So let's have a look.
John Beaton, isn't it?
This is quite interesting. Stephen is agreeing again with 420 somewhere. Maybe you and 420 somewhere have a number of things in common.
Maybe we're the same person.
Your eyes aren't very wide open there, but I'm also going to agree with Pam yet again. Is in touch with my feminine side. I'm going to go to 3-1 to Celtic as well. Jerry, what are you going to call it as?
Either 3 or 4 zip, which adds up to 7. So either or. I think we'll score a few, and I don't think we'll lose a goal.
Okay.
3-0.
Awesome. All right. So as we're a few minutes away from the hour, let's move it on to the final bit, which is, as always, our pick of the Celtic socials. Now, we don't have many to look at today. Maybe I'll do my one first, and we'll finish on a slightly different note. This is mine. Now, whenever we were doing the Abu Dhabi CSC show, I played a video of Abu Dhabi just to help set the scene about the place. And it was from this YouTube channel, Ultimate Bucket List. And it turns out that this is the guy a few years ago that did the tour of both Glasgow stadiums wearing the opposing team's jersey, which you might all be aware of. It became news. It was in the Daily Record, if you can call that news. Sorry, Tony. So do you all remember this happening? Steve, do you remember this?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And he's like a United fan, and he went to both stadiums, and he enjoyed Celtic Park significantly more.
Shock.
So that was funny that you did the stadium tour just now, Jerry, and we're sharing that with us.
I actually, yeah, and I think I said to you, Gav, I was going to do the stadium tour, right? And you reshared that, and I think, we get to the end of his video and said, he was getting death threats from people for turning up with a Celtic top on at Ibrox.
420 somewhere has watched a few of his videos. He liked us more. Very true. Okay, and then the final bit of the show, we're going to go to Stephen. Stephen, you talk us through your choice for this week.
Okay, so I think myself and Iain both picked the same one, almost the same time. We all woke up to a bit of sad news this morning. A guy by the name of James Dolman, who is a very famous face on Celtic Twitter, a court reporter and a journalist for Byline Times, and a guy who covered many Celtic court-related stories down through the years, as well as the sort of liquidation stuff with Rangers. Took a lot of abuse of the Rangers fans for that, but still retained his integrity. Recently, he's been suffering from cancer, and he had a terminal diagnosis, and he faced it with great dignity and resilience. And he was posting on Twitter, things like what he was having for dinner every day in the NHS ward where he was recovering. Or where he was being treated, and also he wrote an article on how he really shouldn't have been in hospital, and he was taking a bed from someone else, and sort of exposed some of the failings in the NHS, and I thought that was really summed up the character of the man, and it was a very sad news to hear that he'd succumbed to cancer this morning. The tweet I've picked there was his pinned tweet for many years. I just every time I've seen it, I always have a little laugh at it. It's really, really funny. It says CNN reports. It's a picture of a lion, as you can see. It says CNN reports that according to a senior park official, Cecil the lion's brother Jericho, who is also a lion, was killed on Saturday in Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. So really funny, and God rest his soul.
Yeah, so you also chose this one, Iain, the very same thing. Do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be as erudite as Stephen, but yeah, I think he was on Twitter before me. I think he was on there since about 2010. I think he's one of the original ones. A really funny, sharp guy, always seemed to be kind of interested in you and other people, genuinely was open to having a chat and stuff like that. And a guy who kind of, I guess, he was very passionate about the work he did, in terms of it wasn't all just like the Rangers kind of court appearances and stuff, but he covered a lot kind of social injustices and different stuff like that. And he just seemed like a genuinely a really, really decent guy. So going to be sadly missed, because it's always that way when one of the good guys goes. But he put up a good fight, and hope if any of his family or friends are watching, he's a guy that'll be remembered.
Lots of tributes to him on Twitter today. Yeah, very sad.
Yeah.
I think it was quite fitting that his last tweet that he sent out was, I think I shared it earlier on, it was just the word Kyogo. He'd obviously tweeted it out when Kyogo scored that goal that we've just watched from Jerry's pocket. So it was the very same goal, and I guess he was maybe not in a very good way, and that was all he was able to type. So very fitting that was his last contribution to Celtic Twitter.
Okay, well, on that rather sad note, I think we'll leave it there, gents. Thank you very much for being with us here today, and thank you for everyone in the comments, and as always for participating, and hopefully we can secure the points against St Mirren, and we'll be back on Thursday feeling very positive. Hail, hail.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Hail, hail. Cheers.